Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Army Chief General Bajwa says Islamabad remains committed to always stand by Kashmiris braving Indian atrocities. He said this while visiting troops deployed on the front lines along the line of control on the occasion of Eid al-Adha. General Bajwa said Pakistan is well aware of the enemy's design to destabilize the country and the region. He also said the army is fully prepared and capable of thwarting all internal and external threats. Pakistan and some other South and Central Asian countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha with religious fervor today. In a tweet to wish Eid, Pakistan's President Arif Alvi urged the nation to celebrate the day at home amid the pandemic. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said the day reminds us that no problems can be resolved without great sacrifices. Muslims offer special prayers, sacrifice animals and distribute their meat among the less privileged on the 10th of the lunar month of Zilhajj. Tehran says it has arrested the head of a US-based terrorist group accused of carrying out attacks inside Iran. The state television said Jamshed Sharmahad was leading armed and sabotage operations in the country. It also accused Sharmahad of being behind the deadly 2008 bombing in the southern city of Shiraz. India has reported yet another record number of COVID-19 daily cases with over 57,000 testing positive in the last 24 hours. The country's death tally has risen by 764 to over 36,000 with nearly 1.7 million cases. In Pakistan, the death count has reached 5,951 with over 278,000 confirmed cases. Meanwhile, Mexico has overtaken the UK to log the world's third highest COVID-19 death toll of 46,688. The worldwide number of COVID-19 deaths has exceeded 678,000 with over 17.5 million infections. Lebanon says it is ready to defend itself against Israel's attacks, which are in violation of the 2006 UN Security Council resolution. In a televised address, President Michel Aoun said the country would lodge an official complaint with the UNSC. Aoun said they are committed to defend the country's land and will not compromise on this matter. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Pakistan and some other South and Central Asian countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha with religious fervor today. In a tweet at Oweshi, Pakistan's President Arif Alvi urged the nation to celebrate the day at home amid the pandemic. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said the day reminds us that no problems can be resolved without great sacrifices. Muslims offer special prayers, sacrifice animals and distribute their meat among the less privileged on the 10th of the lunar month of Zilhajj. This year, Muslims are faced with unusual circumstances due to COVID-19 as they are unable to hold large gatherings in mosques. Smaller gatherings following strict protective measures were held in numerous countries, including Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh and India. Worshippers wore face masks while offering prayers and in place of hugs relied on elbow taps and waves. Pakistan's Army Chief General Bajwa says Islamabad remains committed to always stand by Kashmiris braving Indian atrocities. He said this while visiting troops deployed on the front lines along the line of control on the occasion of Eid al-Adha. General Bajwa said Pakistan is well aware of the enemy's design to destabilize the country and the region. He also said the army is fully prepared and capable of thwarting all internal and external threats. While interacting with the troops, the army chief lauded Pakistani troops' morale and operational readiness. He also visited the Armed Forces Institute of Cardiology and the National Institute of Heart Diseases in Rawalpindi. General Pajwa lauded the contribution of doctors and healthcare workers as frontline soldiers against COVID-19. Tehran says it has arrested the head of a US-based terrorist group accused of carrying out attacks inside Iran. The state television said Jamshed Sharmahad was arrested during a complicated intelligence operation. It said the militant was leading armed and sabotage operations in the country. It also accused Sharmahad of being behind a deadly 2008 bombing in the southern city of Shiraz. The US has imposed sanctions on a Chinese government entity and two officials, accusing them of human rights abuses. The Treasury Department identified the company as the Xinjiang Production and Construction Co. It said a former party secretary of XPCC, Sun Jinlong, and deputy party secretary Peng Jiroe have also been blacklisted. This comes a week after the US closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, with Beijing retaliating by shuttering Washington's consulate in Chengdu. The Treasury also issued a license to block XPCC subsidiaries until September the 30th. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is working on a new nuclear non-proliferation treaty with Russia. Speaking in Florida, Trump said it will be great if Washington and Moscow can reach an agreement soon. In July, Russia and the U.S. held consultations on arms control and disarmament. The only arms control treaty between the two countries, the New START, is set to expire in 6 months. That agreement jots down details of the amount of nuclear weapons each party can hold. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned of a fierce arms race if this treaty ends. Now, Mexico has overtaken the UK to log the world's third highest COVID-19 death toll of 46,688. In the US, more than 60,000 people have tested positive for the virus and over 1,300 lost their lives in the last 24 hours. The worldwide number of COVID-19 deaths has exceeded 679,000 with over 17.5 million infections. This report has the details.
The new coronavirus is ravaging the Americas, dashing all hopes of reopening the economy anytime soon. The U.S. reported almost 25,000 deaths in July alone, while the country's overall death count has exceeded 153,000, with nearly 4.6 million cases. Peru has prolonged its lockdown to over half of its regions after registering the highest daily number of new infections since late May. Meanwhile, Mexico has registered 688 additional deaths and a record 8,458 new cases.
If we've overtaken them, it's going to be even harder to diminish this pandemic that's hitting us hard. We have to protect ourselves as much as possible to avoid spreading it from one person to the next.
Europe is gripped by fear as Spain reports the second day of 1,000 plus coronavirus infections, the highest since the nation lifted its lockdown in June. Over in the UK, lockdown measures have been reimposed in northern England following a surge in cases.
Today, I'm afraid we're postponing those changes for at least a fortnight. That means until the 15th of August at the earliest, casinos, bowling alleys, skating rinks and the remaining close contact services must remain closed. Indoor performances will not resume. Pilots of larger crowds in sports venues and conference centres will not take place, and wedding receptions of up to 30 people will not be permitted.
Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, has reported close to 400 infections in the last 24 hours and 3 deaths. In mainland China, 45 more have contracted the virus, down from 127 the day before. South Korea, meanwhile, has seen another jump as it reports 31 new cases, up from 18 yesterday.
India has recorded the steepest spike of over 57,000 cases in a day, taking the toll to almost 1.7 million. Health Ministry says in July alone, 1.1 million people contracted the virus. It says 764 more died overnight, raising the death toll to over 36,500. The ministry said cinema halls, entertainment parks, bars, theaters, and other social gathering places will remain closed till August the 31st. U.S. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction says the country is headed for a humanitarian disaster. In its recent report, the U.S. watchdog said Afghanistan lacks required medical equipment to treat COVID-19 patients as the virus continues to spread. It said the pandemic is pushing millions more Afghans into poverty as 32 million people face food insecurity. The report said only 300 functional ventilators are available in the country. It also predicted that Afghanistan has likely entered the recession, with the economy set to shrink 3 to 10% in 2020. Afghanistan's Ministry of Public Health has reported at least 37,000 new COVID-19 cases and over 1,270 deaths. Lebanon says it is ready to defend itself against Israel's attacks, which are in violation of the 2006 UN Security Council resolution. In a televised address, Lebanese President Michel Aoun said the country will lodge an official complaint with the UNSC. President Aoun said the UN resolution calls for a full cessation of hostilities and Israel's withdrawal from the southern Lebanon. He said Lebanon remains willing to abide by the resolution and resolving all disputes under the UN supervision. Aoun said Lebanon's army is committed to defending the country's land and will not compromise on this matter. Earlier, the Israeli military claimed it had thwarted an infiltration attempt by Hezbollah group in the Jabal Ross area. Turkey says it has killed 6 fighters of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Iraq. The National Defense Ministry said the military carried out operations backed by air power in the Ghara region. The ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. It said over 400 Kurdish militants have been killed in northern Iraq in the past 6 months. Turkey holds the PKK responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. A soldier in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has shot dead at least 12 people and wounded 9 in a drunken rampage. Governor of the province, Theocracy, said authorities are still looking for the gunman. The protesters blocked the highway, displaying 12 bodies wrapped in funeral shrouds. Military spokesperson Captain Didone Kasareka said an army delegation and a UN team in the area is negotiating with the protesters to calm them. In Zimbabwe, security forces have cleared people off streets and forced shops to close in the country's capital, Harare. The decision has been taken a day before planned anti-government protests during the worst economic crisis in more than a decade. Activists have called for street rallies across the country over corruption in the government and economic hardships. Earlier, Zimbabwe's President Mnangagwa said the protest will constitute a rebellion by the opposition. In central Harare, anti-riot police patrolled on foot and in trucks, telling people to leave. Many people were killed during a crackdown on the last major anti-government protests in January 2019. The UK and France say they have intercepted a record number of migrants attempting to cross the English Channel over the past 2 days. British authorities said 202 migrants were intercepted by the UK border forces in 19 separate incidents, while France rescued 25 migrants during 2 operations. France's Maritime Prefecture says that it rescued an additional 58 migrants today morning. This beats the previous record established earlier this year when 220 migrants were rescued over a 48-hour period. The migrants were primarily citizens of Yemen, Iran, Sudan, Iraq, Eritrea, Kuwait, Egypt, Chad, and Mali. Russia's direct investment fund says 100% of the volunteers in its vaccine trials have created immunity against the coronavirus. In an interview, head of Russia's direct investment fund, Kirill Dmitriev, said the immunity developed 21 days after receiving the first dose. Dmitriev said the immunity doubled after the batch received the second dose. He said Moscow will be publishing its findings in August. Dmitriev said the scientists did not rush to be the first, but were focused on protecting people in Russia. RDIF had said more than 20 countries have shown interest in buying the Russian cure. China has rejected the U.S. allegations of hacking its government-targeted biotech firm Moderna to steal data about the coronavirus vaccine. In a briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said the U.S. accusations are baseless and lack evidence. He said Beijing does not engage in technology theft. Wang said China is leading the world in vaccine development for COVID-19. He said Beijing is more concerned about the use of hackers to steal Chinese technology by certain countries. Earlier, the U.S. indicted 2 Chinese nationals for allegedly hacking defense contractors and coronavirus researchers. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In India, cow vigilantes savagely beat a Muslim man near New Delhi in yet another example of hatred against Muslims. The man was brutally assaulted on the suspicion that he was carrying cow meat in a pickup truck in the city of Gurgaon. The assailants attacked the man with a hammer in front of police. In India, several groups of vigilantes often take the law into their hands to beat minority people. In India, a crane collapse has killed 11 people at a state-run shipyard in the southeastern state of Andhra Pradesh's Visakhapatnam city. Police said rescue workers are trying to cut the crane and remove its pieces. The incident occurred when a new crane collapsed during a weight-bearing trial. Police added that if anybody was trapped alive under the crane, they would only be found once it was lifted. Well, in India's northern Punjab province, the death toll from consuming spurious liquor has risen to 62. Officials said maximum deaths were reported in the Taran district. They said the death count in the district alone has reached 42 following other casualties in the city of Amritsar and Batala. Police said 3 people, including a woman, have been arrested in connection with the case. They said families are reluctant to record their statements and did not want any action. In the U.S., over 1,000 people have taken to the streets in downtown Portland to protest racial injustice and police brutality. The demonstration was staged after President Donald Trump said the federal agents will stay in Portland. Protesters set tires on fire in the streets of Portland, but no clashes with the authorities were reported. As of midnight, no federal agents had emerged from the courthouse, which has been the center of protests for weeks. Unlike previous weeks, protesters were not centered mainly outside the courthouse, but scattered throughout the downtown. A U.S. Marine has died while 8 more are missing after an amphibious assault vehicle sank in deep water of the California coast. In a statement, the U.S. Marine Corps said 15 Marines and 1 sailor were inside the vehicle for training exercises. It said 2 of the 7 Marines who have survived the accident are in the intensive care. The Pentagon says the fate of 7 Marines and a sailor remains unknown after 24 hours of rescue operations involving multiple aircraft and boats. Well, 7 people, including a U.S. lawmaker, have been killed in a mid-air plane collision over in Alaska. In a statement, Alaska state troopers said there were no survivors. It said a Republican state lawmaker, Gary Knopp, was piloting one of the aircrafts. Troopers said the other plane was carrying 4 tourists, a guide and a pilot. The Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board says they are investigating the incident. The U.S. Department of Justice has charged 3 persons in the celebrity Twitter accounts hacking case. The hacked accounts included former President Barack Obama, billionaire Bill Gates, and Tesla chief executive Elon Musk. The FBI said Mason Shepard has been charged with conspiracy to commit a wire fraud, commit money laundering, and the intentional access of a protected computer, while Nima Fazli was charged for aiding and abetting. Details about the third individual were not released by the U.S. officials because he is a minor. In a statement, Twitter said it appreciated the swift actions of the law enforcement. The hack was carried out after stealing the credentials of Twitter employees with access to internal systems. In the U.S., Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has announced an emergency in the state's coastal counties as Hurricane Isaias draws nearer. The National Hurricane Center said Isaias is carrying winds of 85 miles per hour and is located about 80 miles southeast of Bahamas' capital, Nassau. Hurricane Isaias strengthened slightly as it lashed the Bahamas, bearing down on Florida. Isaias is a Category 1 storm on the 5-step Saffir-Simpson scale. The storm prompted authorities in parts of Florida to close coronavirus testing sites. At least 16 people have been killed in flash floods following torrential rains in Afghanistan's eastern Nangarhar province. A spokesperson for Nangarhar governor says 4 others have been injured. He said victims included 15 children and a woman. The spokesperson said all 16 were killed in the Kuz-Kunar district of the province. He added dozens of houses have been damaged in the floods. Pakistan's military has felicitated People's Liberation Army of China on its 93rd founding day anniversary. A delegation led by Beijing's defense attaché at Chinese embassy in Pakistan, Major General Shen Wenrong, visited the Inter-Services Public Relations Directorate in connection with the celebrations of the anniversary. General Iftikhar welcomed the delegation on behalf of Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa. He conveyed compliments from the Army Chief and all ranks of armed forces, all ranks of the PLA. In his message, General Bajwa said the Pakistan Army and PLA are the key components of Pak-China strategic relations. He said Pakistan's military is proud to be brothers in arms with the PLA. China's defense attaché said the military relations between China and Pakistan have strengthened over the years. Chinese ambassador to Pakistan, Yao Jing, said Pakistan and China will work together to ensure stability and peace in the region. The UAE has announced the startup of its Barakah nuclear power plant, making it the first in the Arab world. In a tweet, UAE Premier Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum congratulated the nation on the successful operation. He said nuclear fuel had been loaded into the first of 4 units of the plant. Rashid Al Maktoum said the plant is the first peaceful nuclear energy reactor in the Arab world. The country has plans to build up 16 nuclear reactors, but the project has yet to be materialized. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Well, President Donald Trump has announced he's banning the Chinese-owned video sharing app TikTok in the U.S. He said he can sign an executive order as early as today. U.S. security officials have expressed concern that the app owned by Chinese firm ByteDance can be used to collect the personal data of the Americans. The fast-growing app has up to 80 million active monthly users in America, and the ban would be a major blow for ByteDance. TikTok spokesperson Hillary McQuaid said the company was confident for the success of the app in the long run. The step comes amid growing friction between Washington and Beijing over COVID-19 handling, South China Sea and trade tariffs. Ireland are facing England in the second one international match in Southampton. The visitors decided to bat first after winning the toss. Ireland lost half of its side after England bowlers kept taking wickets at regular intervals. England's James Vince also claimed his maiden international wicket. England have replaced Tom Curran with Rhys Topley, while Ireland's Josh Little has replaced injured Barry McCarthy. England won the first match of the series by 6 wickets on Thursday. The hosts lead the 3-match series by 1-0. In the U.S. National Basketball Association, the San Antonio Spurs beat the Sacramento Kings 129-120 at the Visa Athletic Center near Orlando. San Antonio started the game with the hot hand, building a 16-point lead before setting for a 43-30 advantage at the end of the first quarter. The Kings roared back eventually with a 65-64 lead at intermission. DeMar DeRozan scored 27 points and added 10 assists as the Spurs finished with a flurry. This was Spurs' first game after the league's suspension due to COVID-19. Another weather situation from around the globe. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.